Hi, this is Hank in Los Angeles.
Hank in Los Angeles, what's on your mind?
I watched the show for Matt Lech. I just love when he's on camera.
No, I get it. I get it. You don't have to say.
So he wears those hats.
Yep.
It's irresistible. You'll have a whole bunch of extra wax laying around, and you'll start waxing everything. All of a sudden, I felt a small piece of wood bounce off my eyeball.
Oui.
It launched right up. It just hit the eyeball. Like
the feud between Sam Seder and Cenk Uygur has metastasized into Majority Report covering the Young Turks in order to counteract their misinformation. I actually have done a ton of research already, compiling various clips of this whole thing that I'd like to get into on a previous episode of the show. If you're curious, go back to the playlists, the negotiation. Okay, this is much better. This is the one I was looking for. So on a previous episode, I talked in detail about the Emma Vigeland Polymarket Facebook thing that Cenk had said, where he screams that Emma should give the money back that she made, that he gave her for being an employee, for making money for him, for producing surplus value for his fortune. And he argued that because his being sponsored by an illegal gambling website that allows you to bet on how many fires are happening or how many children are getting killed in Gaza, or exactly precisely, don't quote me on those specifics, but you can bet on like world events like the fires, like Gaza, like genocide. And that's the Polymarket Studios that's been going around. So this is a pretty good dive into that.
Emma, I can't believe you work with Peter Thiel and Peter Thiel funded organization Facebook. Hey, give me all that money back.
You must think your viewers are fucking morons to make that argument.
This one right here. But now TYT is being covered by Majority Report because of the way that they're covering the LA fires. That's what this one is about. Let's just listen to it, and I'll have more to say.
Some of these folks are on the street. Some of them I know are experiencing mental health episodes. But the reality is they should be in housing. That might make it so that they could have heat.
Yeah, how do you solve drug addiction and homelessness? Is it with cops?
Yes.
In 2020.
There's also a great breakdown of the Young Turks by Brittany Page. It's like a 20-minute video about TYT's claims about housing first and stuff. And Brittany has experience working with the unhoused and working with this stuff, and she has a lot of research. She does a very good job breaking it all down. Housing first is everything. We need to get people indoors so they can be safe enough to be healthy, to work on their health. The being outdoors, exposed to the elements, exposed to the dangers, exposed to the risk, is the absolute worst environment to expect somebody to stop doing drugs and to get over their addiction. It's utterly inhumane. It truly is. So more from Sam.
Incidentally, it was a gender reveal party that started a massive El Dorado fire.
Right.
Wow.
The gender reveal party thing, I need to look into those a bit more in terms of their origins. But that's a real weird, like, straight people thing, to be all worked up about your baby's genitals and having a whole party where you show the color of and it's like this. I think, is it all done for clout, like social media, just to make your video of the golf ball is pink dust, not blue dust? Like, what it's super binary, kind of like trying to lock in this whole stuff and applying cultural norms and expectations to your baby's genitals. It's weird. It's super crazy. And like he said, I do kind of remember that some gender reveal party caused a massive fire. I mean, okay, fine, do whatever you got to do. Don't start fires, but it just seems like such a weird thing to have a cake. I actually think pink is a nice color, by the way.
That sounds like meth head nihilism.
But again,
to me.
like, why is this stuff kindling all of a sudden? Like, it's not like homeless people started fires like the last couple of years. It's because massive droughts getting more and more regular because of climate change. The exact same thing that Shellenberger has been downplaying.
He's pulling this out of his ass because this is not the cause of this. And it is a way of distracting from all the other stuff that you're talking about, climate change. It's right-wing talking points.
He's not talking about Cenk yet, by the way. He started referring to a previous guy who was saying that the reason the fires are starting is because of homeless people cooking their drugs. It was, I think, Michael Shellenberger. I'll confirm that before I post this. But that's so he's not speaking about Cenk in that comment.
Just to basically, reinforce a completely distinct phenomena. And do we have any more? Do we need to even watch?
That's really basically it, I think, based on what I saw. It's unfortunate because it seems like this is the kind of thing that a lot of other media outlets are leaning into. Fox News,
who else?
You know, whatever. Like, I saw Daily Wire stuff. That's what they're all running with. That's what they're all running with.
Let's analyze this.
Fox News, Daily Wire. Oh, TYT.
So, look, guys, the PG&E has been the cause of most of the most amount of fires that we have tracked. Okay?
Okay, this is exactly what Tucker and Shellenberger
Pause
did,
it.
right?
I like it when Sam says pause it. Unpause it.
They concede that the electric company, in many respects, they know, like if anybody knows that there's going to be wind, I got news for you. The electric company knows that there's going to be wind. They've been sued on this many times. Why do they not bury more of their power lines? Because it would cost them money. And it is likely, at least in Altadena, there is, to the extent that we have evidence of any start of this, it appears to be right now a transformer that blew. They have video of it. People are already starting a lawsuit based on it. Okay, so that is appropriate. Now, prepare yourself for a really in-depth examination of this policy of PG&E. This is just, you know, Shellenberger and what's his face, Tucker. They touch on it and they just say it, and then they just go into their whole homeless meth thing.
But they're right wingers. They're right wingers. Yeah.
But in this instance, we're going to hear more about PG&E because they're responsible for most of the fires. It's very likely they're responsible for at least one of these. High winds will explode transformers. Go.
Pause it. So I just want to back up and show you the thing that we need to hear because it's relevant because of the comparison they're trying to make. So 225.06. All right, we'll come back to that too. 1814.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, you know, it turns out meth heads love to start fires. You know, there's just every drug has its kind of weird element to it, but meth heads love starting fires. They love destroying things. Like meth is like the drug of nihilism. So it's like perfect drug for LA and California at the moment.
So it's not, these are not cooking fires.
They could be cooking fires,
but starting fires to destroy things.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Meth addiction.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's not evil or anything.
No, totally fine. Yeah, what could go wrong?
But isn't classically starting fires and torturing animals, aren't those like signs of sociopathic behavior?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, look, meth
like
makes
people in the winter who need to stay warm so they don't die. So those are the people that they're talking about. What did I say? 225.18. I think that's right. Let's go. Let's go. Come on, Hank. You're on the spot. Almost there. Close. Okay, close enough.
Yeah.
But in this instance, we're going to hear more about PG&E because they're responsible for most of the fires. It's very likely they're responsible for at least one of these. High winds will explode transformers. Go.
So, look, guys, the PG&E has been the cause of most of the most amount of fires that we have tracked. Okay, that doesn't mean they're the only source of fires. And unfortunately, do homeless folks who are almost always the fire started by someone who's hooked on drugs. They're starting it for the drugs because you cook some of the drugs. Has that been a major source of fire here in LA over the last half a decade to a decade? Absolutely. Anyone who says that that's not true is just
pause it for 1 second. This is funny because it tracks almost exactly what the conversation with Shellenberger and Tucker were. But we know that the fires that are started
get his ass, Sam, get him,
either by homeless people accidentally or via them cooking their drugs or whatever it is that they're supposedly doing, and there's no definitive data on how these fires started. We know these are primarily in downtown LA, and we have no evidence that meth head homeless people are setting fires that turn into massive wildfires. Maybe there's one, like there was one gender reveal party that started a fire, but I don't think all gender reveal parties are,
people that do drugs indoors. indoor, like how many rich people have all kinds of space to do their drugs, their backyards with their fire pits, their outdoor kitchens with a refrigerator that's filled with Blue Moons and LaCroix. Do you have any idea how much illegal substances are flowing through the veins of the wealthy through their cooking, having to cook the drugs too, or the snortable kinds?
I'm not going to go into like the dynamics of gender reveal parties over and over again and talk about this. Like most of them are electrical companies, but gender reveal parties did El Dorado. Let's talk about this for 15 minutes about how like, oh, you got to be so proud.
We got to be honest about these gender reveal parties, guys.
The different genders that take place in these things, and like, you know, like they're going to be, they're so locked into their patriarchy that they got to have you know, they want to have like pink blankets for the gender reveal or blue, depending on who the gender is, and we go
guns, blue guns, and pink vacuums at your gender reveal, whichever one you get. That's the baby you got. Oh no, it's a pink vacuum. Oh, my life is ruined. I'll never retire. Patriarchy, by the way, guys, this fucking hurts everybody. It's bad for men too, you stupid fucking morons. Whoosh.
Deep into that. No, that would be absurd. That would be absurd. Go ahead.
Fire here in LA over the last, half a decade to a decade. Absolutely. Anyone who says that that's not true is just literally indisputably lying to you. And I guess the reason they would lie to you is, oh, we want to protect our unhoused neighbors, so let's cover up the fact that they're starting fires to get high. So, but remember, not all homeless people are the same. That's the minority of homeless people. We're not trying to be,
All right, how about safe injection sites? Let's have medical people oversee drug use within populations where people can have access to clean needles and safe fire usage and food, maybe give them some water, maybe help them out a little bit. Let them get high. They do drug programs in other countries. I think in Portugal, where they legalized drugs in a very substantial way. And it worked very successfully until the conservatives over there messed it all up by defunding it and by messing with it. But you provide people with access to drugs, and they can come in and do it before they go to work as part of a process for getting off of the drugs and for accessing help and for alleviating the shame and the guilt and the secrecy and the horror of it. It's a medical issue. It's a person in a severe crisis who needs help. I used to have a drinking problem. I'm an addict. I know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. This isn't hypothetical for me. It's been a long time. I understand this stuff better than you might have realized. It's fucking sick that these guys are spreading this stuff.
And disparaging about homeless people. We're just telling you a reality, and you covering it up doesn't help at all.
My joke about it, by the way, is if I tell you about why I had a drinking problem, then you'll have a drinking problem. It's a lot to do with like my mom's coma. That wasn't her fault. I'm saying it was a lifetime of. It was a part of a struggle. Actually, a lot of people who are late identified autistics struggle with substance use disorders, and not just late identifieds, but people who have neurodivergence have a much higher rate of all of these sort of unhealthy outcomes, especially substance use disorder, for sure. That's well studied.
So,
helping.
Well, like,
so shine some sunlight on it. If we're covering it up, shine some sunlight. You know, I also use a lighter to cook my drugs, aka when I put my joint into my mouth and then light it like that. But I guess not people smoking pot.
Hey,
no.
Call the FBI. Emma just admitted it. She's the drug fire person. Get Emma. She's running.
Aren't being blamed for starting these wildfires.
That's what's so frustrating about this. Tucker and Shellenberger and Cenk and Anna do not have the solution to this problem of let's divorce it entirely from the fires. Homelessness and addiction, they don't have jack for either of those things. All they have is let's throw more cops to the problem, which is what this country has been doing for a while. Rick Caruso, a billionaire developer, the guy you endorsed in the last thing, you think he has the solution to this?
Caruso's owns a property in the Palisades. The Palisades are a very fancy spot. I know there's a mix of income levels within there too, because there are people, a lot of these homes have been there for a very long time. They get passed down through generations and stuff. Among the other communities around LA that have been destroyed. But the Palisades I've been up there for deliveries. That's the only reason I would have been up there. And They're fancy. They're very nice. It's kind of the Pacific Ocean side of Beverly Hills. So the Hollywood, L.A. is a flat basin, a bunch of hills. That's called the Beverly Hills, the Hollywood Hills, and then like and then like north of those is the Valley. I think it's called the San Fernando Valley. Honestly, I'm such a shut-in. I barely know L.A. It really, people say stuff about L.A. and I'm like, I don't know. I just know where my grocery store and the Chinese restaurant and the gas stations are around here. That's about it. But these hills sort of bisect this whole like region, and it's like 10 to 15 degrees warmer up in the valley. And so downtown LA and the ocean, where Santa Monica, what's south of Santa Monica? It's a Huntington Beach and stuff, right? Their Malibu then is like sort of a rich people area. If you go further north up, kind of around where it sort of bends the road, the land kind of shifts to a bit of a western face, so that the beach would be facing south. Is I guess what I mean. Anyway, but the Palisades are embedded up in these hills up there, and they're really beautiful homes up there. Really quite nice places. And it's also sad for those people to lose their houses too. This isn't, I mean, about the only positive out of this whole thing is that if enough rich people are harmed, a slightly more effect on politicians, maybe. Even then, though, I still think they're just going to allow the billionaires to come in and pick it apart for profit. The people are just going to swoop in and, they have millions of years of Lexus payments stashed away, but they're going to be able to come in and take advantage of all these people whose lives have been destroyed. But yeah, the Palisades are very nice. What the hell got me talking about that? I don't remember. Oh, Rick Caruso has this property up there. He's a billionaire area guy who ran for mayor of LA against Karen Bass as a Democrat, but he was like a Republican up until his that last year or something. Just a scoundrel, just total scoundrel. His mall, this like outdoor shopping area kind of mall property of his up in the Palisades didn't burn because he hired private fire department to come in. People with water trucks, and they used public water to prevent his property from burning. So Matt's talking about Rick Caruso there, but I don't know if he's going to get into those details.
Well,
no,
he does have a solution, and it is going to be
protect his mall,
mall, and then buy up all the property now that is burnt down at a huge discount.
Right. It's just absurd because we know that there are people of all different incomes that experience drug addiction. In California, tabloids cover it pretty well. There are celebrities who experience addiction and they're able to go to rehabilitation centers, which is a good thing.
Addiction's higher in West Virginia, but housing's cheaper there because, I guess less Carusos around.
And so the point is just that they're also making this assumption that the drugs happen first, as opposed to sometimes when people are unhoused and they've experienced financial immiseration, drugs are available and it's sometimes the only thing that helps them and gets them through the day. We all do our own things to cope and self-soothe. But people who are on the higher income part of our society, they can fall into addiction and then...
For me, I play Valheim and I maximize my turnip production.
Sometimes it does.
Farming is so satisfying.
Doesn't work, and sometimes they die, and it's horrific. But sometimes they get help. But if you have not enough resources to even have an apartment or even have a friend or a family that you can stay with, and you're on the streets, you are unable to have imagine any of those resources. And then the other part of this is, though, for solutions. The wealthy people that do drugs that I mentioned, and they may be using lighters, they're doing it in their home. And the problem is that there's not housing for these folks. So they're on the streets and they're in dangerous situations for themselves, and that include, violence that is pushed against them caused against them as well.
But here's the sort of the grossest part about it. When Tucker and Shellenberger do it, and when Jesse Waters does it, and when the Young Turks do it. The grossest part is that, even if I was to stipulate that every homeless person who exists is a meth head.
Right.
And even if I was to stipulate that they all like to light stuff on fire, this has nothing to do with what just happened. This has nothing to do with what just happened. Okay? It would be if I was to say, these fires in LA, people talk about them. But what about the people in Dresden who we firebombed and we destroyed the whole city and we lit that all up. Like, where are the Germans in this? You know, this is, yes, fire. I get it. Fire in LA.
Right.
But there is no evidence that this was started by a homeless person. There is every bit of evidence that the reason why this happened, the one but for, because if a homeless person lights their tent on fire because they do it because they're a crazy meth head, or they do it by mistake because they're on whatever it is, and it's on, underneath a bridge, it is not going to create a massive wildfire, leaving tens of thousands of people homeless and hundreds of billions of dollars, unless we have climate change and we have the impact of climate change and the failure of broad infrastructure to deal with this. You could get every single homeless person and have put them in the jail that you want to put them into, where they would all have been over the past 3 weeks. If you, a month ago, you had round up every single homeless person in LA, put them in the jail like you want to with all the cops that you want, guess what difference that would have made with those fires? The only difference would be that there's probably less desperate homeless people out there having to inhale that smoke. That would be the only difference.
The structure of that segment so revealing, the nod in the preamble toward the real issue. And then let's move quickly to emphasize whatever rhymes with the right-wing propaganda on the subject, 100%. Which is exactly what they did with the Colorado slum thing, which is like, oh yes, sure, maybe these are slumlords, but let's talk about the Venezuelan gang violence instead, which also, like this, they do not have an actual solution for.
But like, it's personal pathology, and this is the like, we know why Tucker Carlson and Shellenberger blame homeless people for the systemic problems in society, because right wingers, that's literally one of their, like, the modus operandi is blame people who are less powerful so the powerful can get away with more. Yep. So then the question is why is the Young Turks doing that? Why and why? I know you don't care, but I mean, I guess I don't care either. But I do think that it's notable that, you know, Rick Caruso, billionaire real estate developer and all that kind of thing, like, why not point at the developers and say, we have a problem of housing in this area where it's completely unaffordable and people are forced out onto the streets, punching up, because that's how you make change in society. When you punch down and then also don't provide real solutions, then it's just like I don't even care. Open question.
Because it's if the idea is that we are the existence of fire in LA compels us to talk about how homeless people are meth heads, not the majority. Are meth heads. Like, you're not just like, whatever the motivation is for that, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because what it is it's fundamentally a lie. Because
there's a point I'm waiting for them to get to. That's why I'm not just trying to take all their content here. I'm like, I gotta be saying stuff. I think they're about to get to it though.
You are giving you are providing a false connection between these two stories. Okay? You're providing a false connection. You're skipping over the reality of the most, like, sort of relevant aspect of this story. Actually, two of them, which is maybe more than two, which is climate change, key elements of infrastructure, and the inability of society to sort of like square that circle, and in part because of the denial of climate change. And then what you're doing is...
And having rich people calling the shots and having corrupt government, including the Democratic Party of California, for sure. The way we build out infrastructure, the design of society. There's things you can do to mitigate fire substantially with, like wet plants, succulents and stuff, like building fire breaks, having even sprinkler systems. I saw a thing about in Japan that does that. Obviously, that seems there's probably more logistical technicalities to that. I bet you they're just going to start building rich people houses with just giant fire suppression stuff built in. I bet you that's what's going to happen eventually, after they, turn these devastated areas into resorts for fancy people.
You're providing more climate denial because all of this stuff is about priorities.
Yep.
And the reason why Shellenberger and Tucker and Jesse Waters and probably every other right-wing show are prioritizing homeless people or, Karen Bass's trip to Ghana is because they don't want to talk about the fundamental reality of what's going on and what fundamentally has to happen to deal with that problem.
Yeah, okay. Go support the Majority Report. If you're watching this, you probably are on there. Yeah, it's just interesting that they're covering TYT. They cover Daily Wire. They cover, other shows, Dave Rubin, Jimmy Dore, etc. And now they're covering TYT. Yeah, so I'll probably return to that whole thing if I get a chance to put together the podcast for it. I have a ton of links already set up for it, but it's also like I got to kind of focus on the documentary and the other stuff that it's going to take. So I called into Majority Report once, and we talked woodworking. I got on my first try, and it was crazy. And we talked about woodworking a little bit. I told him a story about how I felt a piece of wood bounce off my eyeball when I was stupidly trying to close a lid on a stain or on a can of something. I used a piece of wood to hammer it, and all of a sudden I just felt a tap on my eyeball. And the lesson was wear your safety glasses. That was a few years ago.
Can't even watch those commercials.
Calling from a 424 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Hank in Los Angeles.
Hank in Los Angeles. What's on your mind?
Hey, Sam. Good to talk to you guys. I watched the show for Matt Lech. I just love when he's on camera.
No, I get it. I get it. You don't have to say.
He's no Eminem.
That's unsaid. That's unsaid.
So he wears those hats.
Yeah.
It's irresistible. Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller. I've been a woodworker for several months, Sam.
Ooh.
And I know that's one of your hobbies.
Yeah.
So I'm calling to do a little woodworking talk.
Okay.
With you.
Sure.
Great. I make like fancy cutting boards and stuff. Basically, it's a professional shop, and it's been a long-time hobby of mine. Been learning a lot. And I just have some, been sanding. I'm a professional sander, is what I do.
All right.
So,
well, I have a question for you though. What are you treating those blocks with? Because I'm always fascinated by what people, every person I have ever spoken to who makes like a cutting board says that they treat their cutting board with something different. What do you treat yours with?
All right, we have a thing. It's called craft oil. I'm not sure if you can get it on the retail market or not, but it's a food safe oil stain. It's actually the one we use. It's very easy to apply. You just wipe it on and wipe it off. It absorbs. You gotta let it dry, and then we apply a wax finish coating, which is fairly common.
Like a beeswax, right?
Yeah, it's a combination beeswax, mineral oil, and paste wax, I believe.
Right.
And the mineral oil is just a vessel for diluting the wax, and the mineral oil will then basically evaporate, as far as I understand it. I'm kind of new to the whole thing. So
what is it? Craft? What is it called?
Definitely.
Craft
oil.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not confident that. Yeah, I've never even Googled it. I don't know if that. It seems to be great stuff. I've used boiled linseed oil myself in some of my own projects before I started working at this place. So, but yeah, it's something you should care about because you don't want to put a chemical on the thing that you're going to prepare food on.
Of course, so it's usually mineral oil and beeswax is what I usually get.
Yeah. That's generally the finish, and it gives you a nice matte finish, and it's also replaceable. Like you can fix it up after some time if you use it, and you can sand it down and then fix it up. It's a fun project, and then you'll have a whole bunch of extra wax laying around, and you'll start waxing everything. You'll just start rubbing that crap on your cabinets, and because it's pretty fun and easy to do when you get to that point. Yeah. So I'm just curious, what do you do? Kind of like DIY home building stuff, or are you making like bespoke little items for
cabinets?
What's your
more like cabinets?
All right.
and stuff like that. And sometimes I try to make a bowl or two, something like that.
Oh, good. It's tricky, isn't it?
That's tricky. I'm not so handy with a router.
Oh man, be careful with those things. You got to wear your eye protection.
Oh yeah, I always do.
I don't want to take up too much time. So I was going to share some safety tips, or just at least regarding eye protection.
Okay.
I was I was returning a lid to a can of some schmutz. I don't know. I don't remember. We're always opening tight lids and then hammering them back. And I decided to use a little piece of scrap from the garbage. It was the closest hard thing near me, and I was just hammering away on it. And all of a sudden, I felt a small piece of wood bounce off my eyeball.
Oy.
It launched right up. It just hit the eyeball, like just right into it. I felt a little tickle of something for like a day after that, but I dodged it. I dodged a bullet very, very luckily. It just kind of just barely touched. But I didn't have my glasses on, and I usually do, and they were on my hat.
I always have my glasses on.
What a reminder to.
I mean, because I can't see without them, so I have that covered. And then sometimes I'll wear goggles if I'm doing, something else. And I also wear a mask when I'm sanding.
Super important. Yeah, you should. You definitely should. That dust will get in there, and then there's no getting out.
Yep.
It's that's good stuff.
All right. Appreciate the call.
That's you guys doing great. Yeah, I'll call back. We'll talk woodworking if that's cool with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Find out what that craft oil is.
Hell yeah.
It's a trade secret. Yeah, they won't tell about it. They're very, very quiet about that.
But that's why in the movie I refer to Majority Report as a local woodworking podcast, because I kind of want to call in to Sam and I have this idea to do a comedy thing with Sam where I host a woodworking show, but only when I call in, and if he answers my call, that's the start of the woodworking show, and I introduce him as my guest. I think that'd be kind of a funny thing. I got to work up the balls to do that, though. I'm really not quite there right now. Right now I just have the balls to go buy slurry for my fat face.